Good morning, everyone. Good morning. How's everyone feeling today? Fine? Feeling good? Excited? A bit tired? It is great honor to join this keynote session with esteemed experts of this important conference. Yesterday, during the first keynote session, the Assistant Secretary talked about how to raise calm children. And the first keynote speaker, Beth, also talked about the interaction between the children and the adults. I think that would be the key point that my presentation will talk about. So my presentation will focus a lot on social emotional learning. Why is it important? And how we can bring this to the children. And to raise calm children, we think social emotional learning is a key to achieve this. A young child's brain is biologically hardwired to anticipate and engage with adults through warm and responsive interactions. Through ongoing safe and scaffolded interaction with supportive adults, children are not only constructing, but really strengthening their brain architecture. So it's very important to have that during the early years. And healthy adult-child relationships depend upon the adult's capacity to develop an early learning setting that is built upon trust, warmth, and respect. So SEL, social emotional learning, is important to nurture individuals who respect and value diversity and equal rights of people, are committed to social justice, sustainable development, and inclusion, are concerned with the environment, have a sense of identity and self-esteem, and are curious to learn about the world. So this is what we want to bring to the children, right? And as social emotional learning and ECCE contributes to social cohesion and peace building by building human and social capacity for peace. And SEL supports building inner peace skills such as self-management, self-awareness, and responsible decision-making, and intra-individual peace skills like social awareness, relationship skills to allow peace to flourish. So SEL framework recognizes distinct but interconnected domain of learning, cognitive, socio-emotional, and behavioral. It's not silo framework. It's all interconnected, and it impacts both sides. So there are many benefits of SEL for children, such as it brings positive impacts on development, including fewer behavioral issues, since the child is more calm and can focus on learning. It also supports children's willingness to play with others. It opens up and respect other children, such as children with a disability or children coming from different ethno-linguistic backgrounds. They want to play with others by respecting others' cultural backgrounds. And also help learners from disadvantaged background because, as I mentioned, it includes brings the inclusion and equity in the classroom. And also it strengthens the cognitive confidence and emotional resilience required to successfully transition from home to ECCE centers to the primary. But if we want to bring these SEL competencies to the children, thank you. What would be the best way to bring it? It's not like math. You can teach 1 + 1. It's something you need to really teach by interacting with the children. But teachers, ECCE teachers are human, right? We are all human. And teachers play a critical role bringing this concept to the children. And teacher play a central role in establish a positive and responsive classroom environment that is conducive to social, emotional, and academic growth. But as I mentioned, ECCE teachers are also human, and they don't work in vacuum. We also have our personal life with a lot of stressful things going on. On top of that, teachers have to constantly manage heavy workload without proper support, unreasonable demands from supervisors. Nowadays, I hear a lot from the parents, and low job status and job security. So they all have to manage all this stressful environment at the same time. Yesterday we talked about we need about 6 million more teachers to reach 1 year of pre-primary education. But the current status, the current working condition of a lot of ECCE workforce leads to teacher burnout, unfortunately. When teachers lack of social emotional competency themselves, it's hard to manage the occupational demands and their workplace, and they may become emotionally exhausted. And if we don't address it, and they tend to suppress their own emotion instead of dealing with the emotion, talking to the others, and get support. And then it leads to, over time, this exhaustion leads to erosion of the quality of their work performance. I think we all experience when we are tired, exhausted, we don't have a capacity to help others. I think a lot of time we use this analogy that in the airplane you get this safety booklets and safety announcement before the plane takes off, right? And it says you need to put your oxygen mask first before putting it to the child. So the teacher have to have their own social emotional capacity to help the children, but if they don't have it, that they will just burn themselves out. So if they stay in the system, and then they can develop a very cynical attitude towards their students and management, which result in more classroom disruptions and even more emotional exhaustion. And then it leads to, now I cannot do this anymore, I will give up. Right? So some teachers give up and leave the ECCE workforce, unfortunately. Some stay, but if they stay, they tend to do more damage in the classroom. So if you need 6 more million teachers to reach universal 1 year of pre-primary education, if we want to keep the quality ECCE workforce in their own classroom, we need to build their social emotional competencies. So teachers with high levels of social competence are better able to protect themselves from burnout. So it's not only about we're building children's social emotional competence, it's for teachers themselves. The teachers with the high levels of social emotional competence can develop, manage, nurturing relationship with their students. They can serve as a behavioral role model for children by regulating their own emotions. Just imagine the teacher say, oh, you need to be kind to your peers, but then the teacher shout to the children. How would the children will react? What would they learn from the teachers? So teachers who possess social and emotional competencies are more likely to stay in the classroom longer, and that's what we want to see in the workforce. So as I mentioned, children learn SEL skills through observing and interacting with teachers through the multitude of experience, interactions, and routines. To deliver social emotional learning effectively, teachers themselves need high degree of social and emotional competencies, and they need to believe that it's going to work, it's effective, and they need to really have to understand the concept of it. And high quality training and teaching of social emotional learning cannot only happen by the teacher. It has to be supported by environment. It needs high quality material, it needs proper training, it needs a well-qualified and capable trainers to train the teachers, and coherent and systematic approach on this. So developing social emotional skills should not be seen as an additional requirement in teaching. We don't want to add more subjects on teachers. We hear it like there are already too many things for teachers to master and teach. But this is a fundamental approach that it needs to be embedded in all learning process. So all levels of government initiative, teaching processes, it has to be all embedded throughout the education system and learning cycle. But there are barriers to social emotional learning integration in the region that we have discussed in our book. So social emotional learning viewed as a soft skills which are not being prioritized. Unfortunately, even under pre-primary level or very low age ECD level, parents tend to focus more on academic cognitive skills. So soft skills sometimes are not prioritized, unfortunately. Social emotional learning viewed as extra workload for teachers, but as I mentioned, we don't want to be added to more burden to the teachers. It has to be embedded throughout their teaching process. Social emotional learning may not non-existent in the current teaching training content. When we reviewed teacher training content in the Asia Pacific region, there are not many countries actually have the social emotional learning content embedded in their training. Concerns about cost effectiveness. So sometimes it's hard to measure if it's really working, if it's really cost efficient. We don't have enough evidence and documentation to prove this. And challenges for teachers. Teachers themselves may not experience social emotional learning teaching before, so they don't know how to bring that to the classroom. And SEL infusion in the classroom, again, if they may aware why we're doing this, what can be done, but they don't have proper training how they can bring it more practical level in the classroom. And the adaptation, because it's very relevant for different cultural contexts, so it has to be adapted to different cultural contexts. So there are some challenges adapting in the different cultural context. So our work recognize the intersection of culture and SEL together. The child doesn't come from vacuum as well. They're coming from community, they bring their own cultural identity, they bring their own cultural knowledge to the classroom. So we want to adopt a holistic approach to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Highly skilled socially emotional learning trained teachers can consider equity aspects like gender, race, culture, ability, socioeconomic and refugee migrant status, ethnicity, language, and geography to the classroom. But they have to train. They have to be trained to bring these topics to the classroom intentionally. So that they can address various forms of inequity and exclusion and empower young people and staff to co-create thriving schools contributing to the safe, healthy, inclusive, and just communities. And adapting established models from one cultural context to the other require cultural responsiveness that situates and celebrates learning within the students' rich cultural context. So what they're bringing to the classroom can be the assets that they can utilize in the classroom, and they can be the foundation for their lifelong learning. So to fully support all children's social emotional learning, adults need to understand their own biases and expectations, develop awareness of students' cultural backgrounds, and acknowledge and challenge any inequitable practice and policies that can limit or harm the development of children. So UNESCO Bangkok has been working a lot to support ECCE workforce and ECCE teachers. Previously, we have developed Southeast Asian guideline for early childhood teacher development and management, which covers entire teaching professions of ECCE. And based on this work, we developed ECCE Teacher Competency Framework for Southeast Asia and the Pacific. There are two different versions because two sub-regions want to focus a bit of different topics, so we developed these two. But while we are developing this Teacher Competency Framework, we realized that social-emotional learning competency is the key and the foundation to reach all other competencies. So we zoom into this topic, and we developed the Asia Pacific Teacher Training Handbook on Social Emotional Learning. So financially supported by the government of Japan and Portuguese, and with the technical support by Asia Pacific Regional Network for Early Childhood, ARNEC, we have developed this handbook. We field tested in 4 countries, Cambodia, Fiji, Vanuatu, and Vietnam. This handbook aims to support member states in Asia Pacific and beyond to equip ECCE teachers with SEL knowledge and skills to ensure that children develop pro-social and emotional skills and positive relationships from the early stage of the learning process. And this handbook is based on this whole school approach. I talked a lot how important the teacher needs to have social emotional competencies, but then teacher cannot do the miracle by themselves. The whole school needs to be involved. Every adult, every person in the school needs to have a high level of social emotional learning. So that they can, every time they interact with the children, they can be the role model for themselves. So we use whole teacher for the whole child and whole school approach for our handbook. Under our handbook, there are 4 thematic areas that we covered. First one, calm, clear, and kind teachers. So we really want to focus on building teachers' own competencies on social emotional learning, as emotional awareness, self-emotional regulation. What would be the trigger points really trigger you to go a bit not in a good mood, and how to regulate that emotion when that happens. Second theme, focus on building a pro-social and responsive classroom. So once you have the competencies and how you can bring that to the classroom, how you can embed it into your daily routine in the classroom. And third theme focuses on diversity, inclusion, cultural responsiveness, and equity, and also covers on gender equality as well. And the last one, really looking at the measurement and assessment, because SEL is seen as hard to measure skills, so we focus on this topic on our last theme. It's quite extensive handbook. It comes with the 10 modules with all the practical tips and exercises that you can do. If you want to complete all the modules with all the activities, it will take 73 hours. But we know teachers are busy, they don't have time to complete the entire handbook by one setting. So when we talk to the countries, they actually go through the handbook and then they select the essential ones, what would be the relevant for their country context, and then do the teacher training. When we do the piloting and when we did the regional training, we did the 5-day courses covering only the essential topics or essential activities under these different modules. And this can be used for both pre-service and in-service teachers. And also it can be used for early childhood workforce and also early grade of primary as well. So they can have a smooth transition from pre-primary to primary education. I would like to end my presentation with this story. I think everyone may know. It was quite pleasant to see in Singapore, actually, the Ministry of Education actually distribute this postcard with this story to the teachers for Teachers' Day. It was quite thoughtful. So I will read out the story. One day, an old man was walking along a beach that was littered with thousands of starfish that has been washed ashore by the high tide. As he walked, he came upon a young boy who was eagerly throwing a starfish back into the ocean, one by one. Puzzled, the man looked at the boy and asked what he was doing. Without looking up from his task, the boy simply replied, "I'm saving this starfish, sir." The old man chuckled aloud. "Son, there are thousands of starfish and only one of you. What difference can you make?" The boy picked up a starfish, gently tossed into the water, and turning to the man said, "I made a difference on that one." We all have opportunity to help create positive change and hope UNESCO's work on social and emotional learning can help you in the process. And if you're like me, sometimes find yourself, I'm already really busy. I'm already so tired. I cannot do anything more. But as Beth said, we should do more to bring these changes, to transform the ECCE system and transform the ECCE workforce to be better and more efficiently. Thank you.